Millionaire twins took the wrong bus. A single mom helped them and couldn't believe what happened. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets of Boston as 17-year-old twins, Marcus and Matthew Sterling, stood at the city bus stop, checking their designer watches with growing impatience. The brothers, heirs to the Sterling tech empire, had never taken public transportation in their lives. Their usual mode of travel involved private cars with personal drivers. But today was different. Today was their carefully planned escape from the suffocating world of their father's expectations. Both boys had grown tired of their predetermined lives. Marcus, the older twin by 12 minutes, was expected to follow in their father's footsteps and take over the family's technology conglomerate. Matthew, meanwhile, was being groomed for a career in corporate law to support the family business. Neither brother had ever been given the choice to pursue their own dreams. Marcus secretly wanted to be a teacher, while Matthew dreamed of becoming a social worker. Their plan was simple: take the bus to Cambridge, spend a few hours at Harvard University exploring the campus and imagining what their lives could be like if they had the freedom to choose their own paths, and return home before their father noticed they were gone. Their private security detail thought they were at their elite prep school for a debate tournament, giving them a rare window of unsupervised time. When bus route 47 pulled up to the stop, the twins quickly boarded, confident they were heading toward Cambridge. However, in their inexperience with public transportation, they had misread the route map. Instead of the bus that would take them to the prestigious university district, they had boarded a bus heading in the opposite direction, toward the working class neighborhoods of Roxbury. For the first 20 minutes of the ride, the twins were too absorbed in their conversation about their dreams and frustrations to notice their surroundings. It wasn't until the bus began making stops in an area they didn't recognize that Marcus realized something was wrong. The gleaming skyscrapers and upscale shops of downtown Boston had given way to modest row houses, small grocery stores with signs in multiple languages, and community centers that served the neighborhood's diverse population. When Marcus nudged Matthew and pointed out the window, both brothers felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. This was a part of Boston they had never seen, despite living in the city their entire lives. Their sheltered upbringing had kept them within the bubble of private schools, exclusive clubs, and gated communities. The diversity and authenticity of this neighborhood was both intimidating and fascinating. The twins decided to get off at the next stop, planning to catch a bus back to familiar territory. However, as they stepped off the bus, they realized they had no idea where they were or how to get home. Their expensive smartphones, which had never failed them before, showed poor signal strength in this area. The bus route maps at the stop were weathered and difficult to read, and the twins found themselves genuinely lost for the first time in their privileged lives. As evening approached, the brothers stood on the corner of a busy street, looking increasingly out of place in their private school uniforms and designer accessories. Their attempts to hail a taxi were unsuccessful. Few cabs ventured into this neighborhood, and those that did were already occupied. The twins had credit cards but no cash for the bus fare, and they quickly discovered that the local buses didn't accept credit cards. Meanwhile, 34-year-old Sarah Martinez was finishing her double shift at a local community center where she worked as a program coordinator, helping families navigate social services and educational opportunities. Sarah had been a single mother since her ex-husband abandoned her and their 8-year-old daughter, Isabella, 3 years earlier. Despite working multiple jobs and facing constant financial stress, Sarah had maintained her optimism and her commitment to helping others in her community. As Sarah walked to the bus stop after her shift, she noticed the two teenagers standing uncertainly on the corner. Her professional experience had taught her to recognize when people were in distress, and these boys clearly didn't belong in the neighborhood. Their expensive clothing and nervous body language suggested they were not only lost but potentially vulnerable. Sarah's first instinct was to keep walking. She had learned to be cautious, especially as a single woman. But her second instinct, the one that had driven her to choose a career in social work, told her that these boys needed help. As she got closer, she could see that despite their privileged appearance, they were genuinely frightened and confused. When Sarah approached the twins and asked if they needed assistance, both boys were initially hesitant. They had been taught to be wary of strangers, particularly in unfamiliar neighborhoods. However, Sarah's warm demeanor and professional confidence quickly put them at ease. When she learned they were lost and had no way to get home, her maternal instincts kicked in immediately. Sarah explained that the buses to their part of town stopped running in 30 minutes, and given the traffic and distance, it would be nearly impossible for them to make it home before dark. She could see the panic beginning to set in for both boys. They had never been away from home overnight without their parents' knowledge, and they were terrified of the consequences they would face. After a moment of internal debate, Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. She invited the twins to her small apartment for the night, promising to help them contact their family in the morning. She could see that these boys, despite their wealth, were just scared teenagers who needed help. Her own daughter was staying overnight at her grandmother's house, so Sarah had the space to accommodate them. The walk to Sarah's apartment building was a revelation for Marcus and Matthew. They passed community gardens where neighbors were tending to vegetables, small restaurants where families gathered for dinner, and storefronts that served as informal community centers. Children played in small parks while their parents watched from nearby benches, and elderly residents sat on stoops, greeting passersby with genuine warmth. Sarah's apartment was modest, a two-bedroom unit on the third floor of a well-maintained building that housed working families from various cultural backgrounds. The twins were struck by how different it felt from their family's mansion in Beacon Hill. While their home was filled with expensive art and furniture that no one was allowed to touch, Sarah's apartment was filled with photographs, children's drawings, and mementos that told the story of a life fully lived. As Sarah prepared a simple dinner of rice, beans, and chicken ingredients she had carefully budgeted for the week, she told the twins about her work at the community center and her hopes for her daughter's future. She spoke about the family she helped, many of whom were working multiple jobs just to pay rent, and the children who studied at the community center because they didn't have quiet spaces to do homework at home. The twins listened with growing amazement. They had never met anyone who worked so hard for so little, yet maintained such genuine happiness and sense of purpose. Sarah talked about her dreams of expanding the community center's programs and her goal of eventually earning a master's degree in social work, despite the financial challenges that would entail. That evening, as Marcus and Matthew settled onto Sarah's couch with blankets she had borrowed from neighbors, they reflected on their day. They had started the morning feeling trapped by their wealth and privilege, frustrated by their lack of choices. But spending time with Sarah had shown them a different perspective on freedom and fulfillment. They realized that Sarah, despite having far fewer material resources, had something they had never experienced: genuine autonomy over her life choices and deep satisfaction from work that made a real difference in people's lives. She had chosen her career because she believed in it, not because it had been chosen for her. As the twins drifted off to sleep, they couldn't help but think about how this accidental detour had opened their eyes to a world they never knew existed, and to possibilities they had never considered. The next morning brought the complicated reality of returning the twins to their world. Sarah had called in sick to her morning job at a local grocery store, something she could barely afford to do in order to help Marcus and Matthew contact their family. When the twins finally reached their father's assistant on Sarah's old landline phone, the relief in the Sterling household was immediately followed by controlled panic. Within 2 hours, Richard Sterling himself arrived at Sarah's apartment building in a convoy of black SUVs that drew curious stares from the entire neighborhood. The contrast between the Sterling family's obvious wealth and the modest surroundings was stark and somewhat uncomfortable for everyone involved. Richard Sterling was a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of his environment and his family's lives. Seeing his sons in this unfamiliar setting, apparently comfortable and well cared for by a stranger, challenged his assumptions about what his boys needed and wanted. He had expected to find them frightened and eager to return to their familiar world, but instead found them engaged in animated conversation with Sarah about her community work. Sarah, meanwhile, was experiencing her own culture shock. She had known the boys came from a wealthy family, but she hadn't fully grasped the extent of their privilege until she met their father. Richard Sterling's immediate assumption that she must want some form of payment for helping his sons revealed how differently their two worlds operated. In Sarah's neighborhood, helping someone in need was simply what neighbors did for each other. However, as Richard spent more time in Sarah's apartment, listening to her talk about her work and watching how naturally his sons interacted with her, his perspective began to shift. He realized that in one night, this woman had given his boys something he had been unable to provide, despite all his wealth. Genuine insight into different ways of living and thinking about success. The twins were reluctant to leave immediately. They wanted to see the community center where Sarah worked, and they had promised to help her organize donated books for the children's reading program. This was the first time in their lives they had felt useful in a way that wasn't connected to their family's wealth or status. Richard found himself agreeing to let the boys spend the morning at the community center before returning home. What he saw there challenged his understanding of his son's capabilities and interests. Marcus was naturally gifted at explaining math concepts to younger children, while Matthew showed remarkable empathy and skill in talking with teenagers who were facing difficult family situations. The community center itself impressed Richard more than he had expected. Despite operating on a shoestring budget, the facility provided essential services to hundreds of families. Sarah had created programs that helped parents navigate the school system, provided after-school tutoring for children, and offered job training workshops for adults. The impact was measurable and meaningful. Even without the corporate-level resources Richard was accustomed to deploying. As the morning progressed, Richard began to see his sons differently, away from the expectations and pressures of their usual environment. Marcus and Matthew demonstrated maturity, empathy, and leadership skills that had been hidden beneath their privileged upbringing. They weren't just wealthy teenagers killing time, they were young men with genuine desire to contribute meaningfully to the world. The conversation that developed between Richard and Sarah was initially awkward, but gradually became more honest and substantive. Sarah, with her professional background in social work, was skilled at facilitating difficult conversations. She helped Richard understand that his son's frustration wasn't really about rejecting their privilege, but about wanting the freedom to choose how to use it. Richard realized that his well-intentioned efforts to protect his sons and secure their futures had inadvertently isolated them from the very experiences that could help them become the kind of leaders he actually wanted them to be. He had given them every advantage except the most important one: opportunity to discover their own values and passions. The solution that emerged from their conversation was unexpected but logical. Richard offered to fund a significant expansion of Sarah's community center programs, but with a unique condition: Marcus and Matthew would be actively involved in the project as part of their education. They would work with Sarah to design and implement new programs, learning about nonprofit management, community development, and social impact measurement. For Sarah, this opportunity represented the realization of dreams she had barely dared to hope for. The funding would allow her to serve many more families and implement programs she had been planning for years. More importantly, she would be able to pursue her master's degree with financial support, something that had seemed impossible. Given her circumstances, the twins were thrilled with the arrangement. Instead of being forced into predetermined career paths, they would have the opportunity to explore their interests in education and social work while still contributing to the family's legacy of success. They would learn about business and leadership, but in a context that aligned with their values and interests. The arrangement also included provisions for other members of the community. Sarah would hire additional staff from the neighborhood, creating job opportunities for people who had been struggling with unemployment. The community center would partner with local schools to provide enhanced tutoring and mentorship programs. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. The Sterling Community Center had become a model for community development that attracted attention from social workers and philanthropists across the country. Marcus had discovered a talent for curriculum development and was working on educational programs that would be implemented in other community centers. Matthew had found his calling in family counseling and was pursuing early admission to social work programs at several universities. Sarah had completed her master's degree and was now managing a team of social workers and educators. Her daughter Isabella, who had initially been skeptical of the wealthy boys who had disrupted their routine, had become close friends with the twins and was excelling in the center's advanced tutoring programs. Richard Sterling found that his son's involvement in meaningful work had actually strengthened their relationship with him and increased their interest in the family business. They brought fresh perspectives to Sterling Tech's corporate social responsibility initiatives and helped the company develop authentic partnerships with community organizations. The story concluded with the grand opening of the second Sterling Community Center in a different Boston neighborhood. As Sarah addressed the crowd of community members, city officials, and business leaders, she reflected on how a simple act of kindness, helping 2 lost teenagers, had grown into something that was improving lives throughout the city. Marcus and Matthew, now confident young men with clear senses of purpose, realized that their accidental bus ride had been the best mistake of their lives. They had been searching for freedom from their privileged world, but instead had discovered how to use their privilege as a tool for creating positive change. The twins learned that true wealth wasn't measured in money, but in the ability to make a meaningful difference in other people's lives. And Sarah discovered that sometimes the help you offer to others returns to you in ways you never could have imagined, creating opportunities and connections that transform entire communities. The wrong bus had led them all to exactly where they needed to be.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.